is a friend of the San Francisco Film Society, and he's been the executive director of the Center for Investigative Reporting since 2008. So it's my great pleasure to welcome Robert Rosenthal.
Hi, thank you very much, and it's really special to be here because, as you heard, this is really an idea that I first talked with Graham about probably three and a half years ago, and many of you know he passed away in August after a courageous battle with cancer, and he was a very special man and really had great vision. And when we began talking about this, I had just come to CIR with the idea of really trying to create a new model, a different kind of model. As you heard, the Center for Investigative Reporting has been around since 1977 and did a tremendous amount of distinguished work. And when I got there in January of 2008, the media world was in chaos as it's continued to be. But very simply, what I wanted to try and do, and what we've actually done, is really sort of create a transformative model for journalism, with the central idea being how you take a really important story, unique story, frame within the frame of investigative reporting and tell it on every platform. So what we're going to see tonight, and you're going to hear tonight, is a terrific example of that model coming to life, really, and the people who you're going to hear from are the ones who did that. It's a new type of newsroom. It's a very innovative newsroom where a team of people come together around the information gathered by core reporters, investigative reporters, and they work together in a very collaborative way to transform that story so it can go into the new platforms and reach audiences the way they want to get a story. I come from, as you heard, a long time in newspapers. We did a story, it went in the newspaper. Now we're thinking of, we do the story, how can we tell that story in these new ways and reach new audiences and really take advantage of the technology to deliver this story. So in the old days, for me, it was the technology was a newspaper. Well, now if you just, in your own lives, think about the different ways you get information, the different ways you consume news, the different ways you connect to people through social media, we're playing around in all those areas and really trying to reach the largest audience possible. Now, the way we do that is through partners and through collaboration. This story, which you're going to hear about tonight, is related to suspicious activity reports and the Mall of America. Suspicious activity reports were really created as a result of 9/11 and the Department of Homeland Security's efforts to track suspicious activity. So what's the definition of suspicious activity? Well, it's very varied. And what you're going to hear about tonight and see and listen to is the way an average person in the Mall of America can become part of the so-called system. And their information can go through what are called fusion centers, through police forces, through the way we're all connected through data and information, and the most obscure thing you think you may be doing in a place like the Mall of America, you can get into the system, so to speak. So the reporting involved in this took a long time. The records which we obtained are not obtained easily, and they're almost impossible to obtain. They're the raw police reports. You'll hear tonight about how the reporters got that. So when we got this story, we knew it was a very good story. How are we going to get this story to the largest audience possible? We're a small nonprofit in California. It's a national story. But what we bring to that is credibility and the ability to tell a story. And we collaborated with National Public Radio, with the NewsHour on PBS. We did print versions of the story. We did an animation of the story. We had an interactive engagement piece on our website, which you'll also see and hear about. So basically, we're trying to reach it out. We pushed it out through social media. But the estimated audience, conservatively on this, when we partnered with NPR, when we worked for months with them, we brought them the story. We don't have the in-house expertise to do great radio storytelling. We know they do. They trusted us. They worked for months with us in a very collaborative way. This is in traditional journalism, you did not share this kind of information. We not only shared it with NPR, we did it with the NewsHour, we did it with other publishers. But if you think about it, on All Things Considered, one of the pieces they did was 22 minutes long, which if you listen to NPR is maybe one of the longest pieces they've ever done. It was so long they had an intermission on radio. It's terrific journalism, and it's a terrific story. And the reporters who did that, Danny Zwerdling and others, worked with our reporters who you'll meet tonight. But we benefited from that. They benefited from it. They did another piece for the morning edition. The story was on the Minneapolis Tribune's website. So it really got very wide distribution. It was, as I mentioned, on national television, and the animation, which Carrie Ching, whom I'm about to introduce, did, will tell you about how she did that and how her own evolution as a journalist brought her to that. But you imagine the team. Carrie didn't do all the research, but she took really unique skills working with an illustrator to tell a story in what really is a cartoon, but a cartoon that gets to the essence of a very complicated story. And the concept is to reach beyond an audience that would never read a story like this in a newspaper or on a website or watch national television or listen to NPR. So part of our goal is to reach these wide and varied audiences in a very different way. So some of this is experimentation, some of it is innovation, but it's really, again, working with the key thing for us, which is storytelling. Highly credible, accurate, vetted journalism. So Carrie, take it away. Carrie Ching.
So, so the process of investigative reporting isn't pretty. A single story can take months, even years, of sifting through documents, really digging through the weeds on something. So my job is to take all of that data compiled by our investigative reporters and synthesize it into a multimedia feature that is short and visually compelling for an online audience that has a notoriously short attention span. So that's not always easy. Our reporters, Andy and GW, had been working on this project about a post-9/11 government program to gather intelligence on everyday citizens for about a year by the time I got involved. And they already had a print newspaper series in the works, the radio story, a television piece with PBS NewsHour. So it was already a pretty robust package, but it just felt a little incomplete in the sense that, you know, this was a story about a government program that could potentially erode the civil liberties of millions of Americans, many of whom were not in that sort of news and politics savvy circle. So how are we going to reach those people? We decided to produce a cartoon. We had one test run at this, which was a cartoon I produced back in June about the external costs of gasoline with reporter Sarah Terry Cobo. And that was really an experiment for CIR. We had never done anything like it, and we had no idea how people were going to receive it, but it did really well, and it traveled all around the web and got picked up by blogs and got blogged about by Time Magazine and Fast Company and Rolling Stone and the Huffington Post, so we were clearly on to something. Although that cartoon we sort of tinkered with, you know, over the course of more than 6 months, and this time we had about 4 weeks before launch of the project to pull it together. So I got together with GW and Andy, we went through the print articles, pulled some documents, hammered out a script, recorded an audio track, added music and sound effects, and shipped it off to an illustrator who lives in New York named Arthur Jones, who's fantastic. And, you know, Arthur and I pulled it together. We didn't sleep much over the last week, but it launched with the rest of the package and went out on the PBS site, NPR website, and CIR's website. But then we also pushed it out on YouTube and Vimeo and Blip TV so that it could travel independently on the web. And, you know, I think for a lot of people who saw this cartoon, it was probably the only part of the package they ever saw. Which, you know, that's okay, because if the purpose was to just get the story out and, you know, teach something about this issue, then it served its purpose. So let's take a look.